Hello, everybody. I am here with an amazing special guest right now. Stephanie Bryant is with me. She's an amazing game designer and a staff member over at Roll20. She lives role-playing games. This is very exciting. For people who don't know Stephanie, why don't you tell them who you are and what you've done in the world of tabletop role-playing games? And I will also point out you are not Dan Dillon one.
I'm not
You
Dan
are
Dillon.
at Mortain. So we're having a little bit of a late start and some technical difficulties here today, but everything is rolling, and it's awesome to see you. So let the people know who you are and what you do in the world of tabletop role-playing games.
Thanks, James, and thanks for having me on the stream. So I'm Stephanie Bryant. I am a game player, a GM, and a game designer who I created a tabletop RPG called Threadbare RPG. It's a powered by the apocalypse role-playing game where you play a broken toy in a broken post-apocalyptic world, and we'll get into that in a little bit. And then my day job is Scrum Master at Roll20, so that's what I do more or less 9 to 5. We have pretty flexible hours because we're all remote, but that's my day job. And I'm very, very excited to be here. I in terms of my gaming life, my first love was Dungeons and Dragons. I've been playing for 40 years. Wow. Pretty much since my dad put the dice in my hand. And I have been GMing for about 30 years, so pretty much since high school, which tells people how embarrassingly old I am, but that's okay.
No, you've got experience. You've got wisdom.
I've got experience, yes. And I love games. I love gaming, and tabletop role playing games is pretty much that's my sweet spot for sure.
So take me back to when your father first put those dice in your hands. What was the situation? How did it go down? And at what point did you think, like, you know what, I can make a go of this and maybe make some money, make my own thing?
That part didn't come until like a couple years ago. But so when I was very, very young, my dad was in the military. At the time, he was in the Army Reserves, and I'm sure that anybody who has served in the military knows that there's a big military crossover. Like there's a lot of military people who play Dungeons and Dragons and who play miniatures games, in part because they're tactical, and also just because they're fun, and like sometimes you have a lot of downtime. So with people in your group, so he kind of picked it up there, I think, and he is a nerd like me, likes science fiction, loves to read, and so when my sister and I were fairly young, he brought it was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, I think. This was right about like when I was learning to read, so I don't entirely remember which version we played. And he helped us make characters. And all I really remember about that very first game was that I had, I think it was an elf, and we came up to this cave, and I wanted to get closer to find out what was inside the cave, and then I died because the dragon inside breathed chlorine gas on me, and I died. And that was, and then I cried, and my dad realized that Dungeons and Dragons was maybe not for kids who are in kindergarten. So it took us a while to play again. But then when I got a little bit older, we played, it was kind of the thing that we did when we went camping, and it would always rain when we went camping. But my mom loves to camp, and so we would go camping. So I have a lot of very fond memories of sitting around in a tent or in a camper with my family playing Dungeons and Dragons. And my brothers remember that Like that's their memory of those camping trips, is playing D&D, not like going hiking or eating s'mores or anything like that. It's like no, like it was D&D. That was what we did. So
That's great.
um, yeah, yeah, fond memories of
Wow.
my geeky childhood.
Definitely. That's awesome. So at what point then did you think like I'm gonna make this thing. I'm gonna make Threadbare. It's a thing that I want to see in the world, and here we go. Like I'm gonna kickstart it and try to get this made.
So, okay, so fast forward to 2008 or so. I wrote a comic book for knitters called Hand Knit Heroes, and it's teenage superheroes. They knit, they fight crime. Every issue had a knitting pattern, because I'm a big knitter and I'm a big nerd. So, and at I kind of hit a kind of a good time when those two things were
Mhm.
crossing over a lot, and there's a big resurgence among knitters and knitters who are geeky. Kind of have a lot of love for that kind of thing. So one of the things that happened was I wrote 8 issues of the comic, and I burned out when we were working on the fourth. So there are
Oh, cool.
4 un like unpublished scripts for comic books, and one of them, the heroes go into this alternate world where everybody is a knitted toy or a like hard plastic toy, and
Mhm.
so it's sort of this alternate universe kind of thing. And the idea of that world and that aesthetic stuck with me. The movie Nine had come out fairly recently. There were a few pieces of media that match this aesthetic, which I call stitch punk. I don't. It's not just me calling it stitch punk, by the way. Lots of people call it stitch punk. Um, but it's that kind of gritty, hack together sort of feel that you get in sort of that maker world kind of thing. These are all very vague terms for what I'm talking about, but essentially, if you look at like Toy Story and you look at Sid's toys, and they're all sort of
Mhm.
hacked together, but they work, and sort of these Franken toy type of ideas. Uh,
Mhm.
so that aesthetic stuck in the back of my head, and I kept thinking, gosh, it'd be fun to do this, to make this in some way. And I toyed with it as a comic book. And then a few years ago, I got back into gaming after having moved and kind of lost my gaming group. And I got on to Google Plus, where there's a very large community of game designers, all of whom right now are mourning the impending loss of Google Plus. But but we're all on Google Plus, and like there's a big ongoing kind of nonstop conversation about game design and principles of game design, and how do you do this, and what are you doing. And around the same time, Powered by the Apocalypse was getting popular, and I was trying out all these games that were not D&D. I tried Lady Blackbird. I'd played that. I enjoyed it. In one of my D&D groups, we played with Other Kind dice, which is a dice mechanic that's kind of a dice pool. And just like all these
Mhm.
different, I was like, oh, you could do this without a D20, right? Like you could do this using all kinds of ways. And uh, and I started designing games, and I put myself on this is sort of weird. All right. I put myself on an apprentice program of learning how to design games, because at this point I kind of knew that I wanted to do this thing, but I also knew that I didn't know what I was doing. And so I started out with, okay, well, I'm going to design a game, and then I'm going to design a game for a contest, and I'm going to design a game with certain restrictions, and I'm going to read these books about game design, and I'm going to attend this conference and learn something about game design. So it was like a very deliberate process of educating myself on what I was doing. Um,
Oh, wow.
yeah, and then I started writing Threadbare, and I started out with oh God, I think it was in development for about 6 years. So I started out with this dice pool game, and every time you got injured, you lost dice from your pool, and it became harder to defeat or run away. And so there was this death spiral that I didn't recognize until I played the game, and someone else GM'd it, and I was like, "Oh no, this is terrible. I got to throw this away." But the people that I ran the game for, they loved the idea behind it. I mean, I have friends who play tested in the very beginning who have said to me, I really wish I could play Bob again, or I really wish that I could play this character again. One of my friends, she took her playtest character and she made a doll for it, of it, and then she gave me the doll. Like just like the intense love that people were having with the setting, told me I had something. And the fact that people would keep asking me to run the game. And I'm a good GM, but I'm not that good. Like, the part of this is definitely the game itself. Like the setting itself just really speaks to people. And so I was like, okay, so I started putting it together. And this is right about when Kickstarter was becoming really big for game developers. And so I was like, well, like if I were trying to self-fund this the way that I did for the comic book, this would be really hard to do. But I could fund just a little bit of initial artwork to sell the Kickstarter, and then, use Kickstarter money to actually illustrate, to pay illustrators and finish it up. So that was essentially what I did. It took me a long time to get there. I had a hiatus of about 3 years for personal reasons, but eventually, in 2016, I think it was, or 2015, I did run the Kickstarter, and wow. This is the result. This incredibly beautiful book with, just. I was so humbled because, we funded in a day. And part of that was because I knew like my minimum viable product that I could put out was affordable at this level. And so we funded pretty quickly, and then it just kept taking off, and we kept hitting stretch goals and everything. And so most of the stretch goals are things that I hired other people to write. So, for example, there's like little adventure starters in here. Like we've got Off to See the Clockmaker, which is a Wizard of Oz inspired game adventure. There's a mini game in here, and in keeping with what is apparently now my brand of having a pattern at the end of the book, there are tutorials in the back of the book for making your own hack together toy.
That's awesome.
And there's a tutorial for this doll's head dice bag, which is just fantastic. And so yeah, it's kind of a labor of love, but it's also it's a wonderful collaboration with everybody who has worked on it and contributed. Either stretch goals or the artists were fantastic, and it's been a really fun process. And there's one thing that I definitely see every time I run this game, which is that people love toys, and they love the idea of playing as a toy. That just, it doesn't matter if they're little kids. Little kids don't need role-playing games, by the way. The callback to my dad teaching me to play D&D when I was a little kid is that small children, role-playing games are basically make-believe with rules. Little kids don't need the rules. They just play make-believe. They already know the rules to that game, right? It's the grown-ups who are playing with the little kids. They're the ones who need the rules. So one of the things that I have noticed when I run this game is that little kids don't care. Kids who are a little bit older, they love the game and are often a little frustrated that there's no combat, but they will bring in their own conflict. And then adults just love like immersing themselves in this like sweet friendship oriented system. So
Well, that's
So there you go.
I want to talk about the mechanics of the game. It's a powered by the apocalypse game. Do you want to talk a
Mhm.
little bit about why you chose the apocalypse system for Threadbare?
Sure. Well, first of all, Threadbare takes place in a post-apocalyptic setting, so there is that sense of scarcity, um,
Hmm.
in that e- everything in the world of Threadbare is kind of broken. It's kind of a principle of the game, is that everything's a little bit broken, and there's a lot of junk everywhere. You can make things out of the junk, but there's a lot of junk. So a lot of times, you'll be in a situation or whatever, and something doesn't work, not because there wasn't a whole lot of stuff around, but rather just because what there is just broken and not usable. So the mechanics of the system, the main reason I picked Powered by the Apocalypse was I'd played a dice pool game and tried to use a dice pool mechanic with Threadbare, and it didn't quite feel right. I had played a few other games, and one of the things that I loved about playing Powered by the Apocalypse games, I played Dungeon World was the first one that I played. One of the things I loved about it was that uh, when you roll a miss, something interesting happens and you get XP. So a
Mm.
miss was not a failure necessarily. A miss is just like something that you didn't want to have happen occurs, and also you learned from it. So I like that mechanic, and I was excited about it. And so of course that is one of the things that ended up on the cutting room floor, is that you don't get XP when you miss in my game, but that's okay. You get something else, and which I'll get to in a second. But so the math for 2d6 is easy. It's
Mm.
craps math. It's 7 is the most likely thing you're going to hit. 2s and 12s are pretty far out there. It's a bell curve. It's easy math to do.
Mhm.
And even with a
Sure.
modifier, uh, as long as you respect that a +1 and a +2 is significant, and a +3 is like you're almost always going to win, or succeed.
Mhm.
So you just kind of have to like be very um, judicious about when you allow bonuses to things, because otherwise it's just uh, there's nothing wrong with a game just being about succeeding at things, except that a lot of people don't find that as interesting as when there's an obstacle that comes in. So you want to make sure that's something that you have as a tool for the GM if they need it.
Mm.
I mentioned that I got rid of XP, and I got rid of levels, and the main reason I did was I was running the game fairly often, and I kept running into the problem that levels didn't seem like a good fit. Like, what are you?
Okay.
I'm a level 2 toy train. Like, what? Like, what does that
Uh-huh.
even mean? Because you don't have classes. You just have like, what is your type of creature that you are, and then everything else is expanded from that. And at this point, I'd already gotten rid of hit points too. You don't have
Mhm.
hit points. There's no abstraction of damage in Threadbare. Like, and this is one of the places where you don't abstract things in my game, which is that if you get hurt, you literally lose a part of your body. So,
Wow.
like, you got damaged, okay, pick a part that is broken, and that's broken now.
Mhm.
So, and you can pick things that you can, like, when you create your character, you can name things that are, you name the things that are breakable. And you can name
Gotcha.
things that are not tangible. You could say, I have a favorite color, and that thing can be broken. So it can be like you get into danger, or you roll a 6 and you like forgot your favorite color, or you can no
Ooh.
longer see your favorite color or something. Like, just yeah, it's a little bit mind bending. James, wait till I get to telling you about how you can literally change physics in this game. Um,
I love this game
so
so much.
yeah, it's great. I mean, it's a little bit weird in that you can do all
Mhm.
these things, but it's also very liberating. Um, so anyway, I had already gotten rid of hit points, and it's always been in the core of this game that that you're not a new inbox toy.
Mhm.
Like, you are modified. You're always changing yourself. You're always building and repairing and upgrading. So like, you're a Barbie who has a chainsaw for an arm kind of thing, right? You're never just like like just got out of the box. And so instead of I'm going to level up, instead what you do is you take some time and you craft yourself a new part. So it's like,
Mm.
okay, I've decided that I'm going to add wings to myself. And so you have to
Mhm.
go out and find the materials to make a pair of wings. And once you successfully put them onto yourself and like graft them onto your body somehow, maybe you sew them on, or if you're plastic, maybe you glue them on or bolt them on or whatever. Once you've successfully done that, you gain a move in the game, in the fiction. So, and the GM and the player usually come up with the move. And if it's wings, I might say, okay, you can fly short distances. Like,
Mhm.
that's a thing you can do. And it's a little bit like, Buzz Lightyear can fly.
Right,
Maybe,
right, right.
like, he thinks he can fly, so he can do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Um,
really falling with style, but okay, got it,
It
got it.
could be, or it
So
could literally be like I flap my wings. Like, again,
Mhm.
we can change physics in this game, and so why shouldn't we, right? And all of that came about. The XP thing came about when I realized that experience points do two things for you when you level up, right?
Mhm.
Leveling up, advancement, does two things for you in most traditional games. It lets you do more things, more different things, right? Maybe even more powerful things, and it gives you more hit points, right?
Gotcha.
Well, adding a body
Mm.
part gives you more hit points, and it lets you do a new thing. So there, that's how you level up. I had one of my younger playtesters, his name's Johnny. He leveled up in the first 5 minutes of one of our games once, which was
Wow.
fantastic. Like, he was just like, I want to go find another part. I'm like, all right, like, let's do this, And yeah, he immediately jumped on like leveling up, in just 5 minutes. I was like, okay, cool, it
There
happened.
you go. Power
So yeah,
gamer in the making, right? Um,
yeah, kind of, yeah, yeah.
but that's
He's
I mean,
he's
that's one of
great.
the things. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, he's great. He has play tested and played now Threadbare at conventions, I think 2 or 3 years running. So
Wow.
it's been a lot of fun to see him develop as a role player, and also to see him engage with this game in different ways over time.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And it's a great way to bring new people into the hobby, which is huge, right? That's how the hobby continues to survive. And one of the things that I
Absolutely.
love about Powered by the Apocalypse games is if you want to be like a power gamer, the story is how you get better, right? The interacting
Mhm.
with the story is your way to be better at things. That's one of the things we tried to do with Burn Bright in sort of a different way, because that's not a Powered by the Apocalypse game. But I love what you're talking about. Like, hey, you want to be better at something, you got to go out and find that body part. You have to
That's
engage
right.
with the story and tell me what you're doing. That's so cool. Oh, I love
Yeah.
that.
Well, and like Burn Bright's paths, right? Which
Mhm.
are they still called paths? What are they called now?
Yeah, they're still called story paths. Story paths.
Story paths, yeah. Which I love, by the way. Like, I love that mechanic.
Oh,
Just
that is a huge compliment because I love Threadbare. So that means a lot to me. So thank you so much. And this game gets a lot of acclaim, and I think rightfully so because it's well made, but it's also made with a lot of enthusiasm and care, and it's also like I don't know anywhere else where you get to play a broken toy in the apocalypse, right? So that's also really cool. We have a couple of questions from folks. Frost from Fire, who also saved our bacon here, technically. Thank you so much, Charlie.
thank
Wants
you.
to know what has been your favorite Stitch Punk character that you've played so far?
Ooh, that I've played.
Mm-hmm.
I I'm always the TM.
Well,
I
how
think
about
I've
one
only
that someone else has
I've,
played?
so oh God, I don't even know that I could pick one that someone else has played, but I will give some highlights.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and some of these are not even the character themselves, just what happened in the course of playing. Um, I was doing a play test at Metatopia and sat down with some. It's called the high test, and it's you're play testing with other game designers. They're all game designers or very experienced play testers, and so their feedback is going to have a level of critical thinking that the people who don't design won't necessarily apply, right?
Sure.
And sat down, described the game, handed out the character sheets, and Mark Richardson pulled out a stuffed animal and set it on the table, and he said, "That's me." And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome! Like you brought your own toy." He's like, "Yeah, I bring this is my toy that I bring with me on my conventions, and I take pictures of it." And Rob from Evil Hat did the same thing, and I was like,
Wow.
"I've got something here for sure." Like that was a little magical moment right there. So there, like things like that happen where people come and they bring either a toy that they love or just that they have with them, or they bring a toy from their like an idea of a toy from their childhood that they love, and they'll bring that to the table and play it, and that is amazing. And the friend that made the toy, the stuffed doll, her
Mhm.
name's Janelle, and that was her childhood toy. She
Oh,
recreated it in my game to play it, and that was fun and awesome and a beautiful thing. And really, like she was one of the very first playtesters, and that was the first time that I saw somebody do that. And it has happened almost every time I run a game. Somebody will bring that like a concept already. Um, uh, One of my favorite NPCs is Dora the Exploder, who so I've made a few hack together toys that I bring to conventions, and I set them up on the table because it's very visual and people get excited about it. And Dora the
Sure.
Exploder is a Dora doll that I bought at a thrift store, and I painted her with war paint, and I gave her a Garfield Beanie Baby pelt as a jacket, and like she looks fierce. She looks super fierce. So she's
That's
kind of
awesome.
and I throw her in as one of the NPCs every so often when I'm running a game of just like someone that you might encounter as an adversary. Um,
Oh, that's
so
so
yeah,
cool.
and it's interesting because people will. Uh, it's Powered by the Apocalypse, so frequently I will ask questions about the character's relationship with an NPC, and so I'll be like, okay, what do you know about Dora? And it's
Mhm.
like, well, she's not actually that mean. She just acts like it, or oh yeah, no, she's terrifying. Like she eats other toys. It's like, oh, okay, like we just the whole gamut here. All right, uh, so that's
That's
always
so
that's always a lot of fun. Um,
that's great. Wow. Um, Evil in Waiting wants to know, if so they say that they always worry about their mind going blank when their turn gets to them. Do you have any suggestions on how to overcome such a fear or prevent it? I think that question also applies to GMing. I have that for fear even more so when I GM than when I play. Is like, what am I going to do if it's why sometimes we tend to over prep, right? Because we don't know. So
yes.
how do you handle your mind going blank?
Okay. So I will address this from two directions. First of all, as a player, okay.
Mhm.
If you're not in a turn-based system, like D&D is turn-based, and if you get to your turn and you're not prepared, you could just lose your turn, right?
Sure.
So it's nice to have something that's always your fallback, uh, and if you tend to chronically have that problem, play a class that has an easy fallback. Like in D&D 5e, the thief is an easy one. They do pretty much the same thing almost every round. In combat, outside of combat, they do all kinds of crazy stuff, but inside of combat, they're fairly simple. In Powered by the Apocalypse games, if the GM comes to your turn and you don't have any idea, you can just say, "Can you bring the spotlight back to me later?" And because Powered by the Apocalypse games don't have strict turns, the GM just shifts the action around the table. And so if you don't have really much to say yet, or you don't have a great idea, and you don't really want that spotlight on you just at this moment, I don't think there are many GMs who are going to be upset if you say, "Come back to me in a minute. I have an idea, but it's not formulated, or I don't really know what I want to do at this minute," because the GM's role is to give you that spotlight to make it awesome for you. And if that moment's not going to be awesome for you, then you could skip.
Right.
So that's the difference between turn-based, where you kind of need something, and something a little bit less turn-based, like Powered by the Apocalypse, where it's much more in flux. Fate, similarly,
Sure.
Fate can have turns, but it's super easy for the GM to let you do, let you come back in a minute, kind of thing. So that's as a player. As a player, it's handy if you have just some basic idea of like the fallback thing that I'll do. And if you just, even if it's just like, I'll just make a basic melee attack, it's fine. You don't always have to make the most tactical choice, right? And then, or just say, just skip me for the second and I'll come back, right? As a GM, I also have the same problem that James does, which is that I am terrified of being unprepared. And so I tend to, I wouldn't say over prepare, because if I am running a 2-hour session of D&D 5th edition, I do not allow myself to prep for more than 1 hour. And that includes setting my maps up, and it includes getting my miniatures together. On Roll20, it's a lot easier because I just drag tokens in, but it includes all of that work too, and reading the module and everything. In a Powered by the Apocalypse game, I try not to spend more than about 15 minutes for every 2 hours in prep. And that is because I have tried to prep games for Powered by the Apocalypse. And what I have learned is that over prep in a Powered by the Apocalypse game is the death of that game. It is the worst thing you can do. It is better to be underprepared, to show up with just a few sketchy ideas and maybe like an index card with a front, than it is to show up and have the grand plan, because then you essentially have not left space for any of the creativity that your other players have at the table. And their creativity is 9 times out of 10 going to be better than what you came up with. But you never know, because they're locked into your grand plan. So in a traditional like a D20 game, like a D&D, or to a lesser extent 13th Age, or I've never really played Pathfinder, but I know it's similar to 3.5, so Pathfinder might be similar. For those games, I personally try not to spend more than about an hour prepping, and for me, if I'm really, really stuck, it's like this is the thing that a lot of GMs do, is they'll have tables of like random stuff, random information, random monster, random name generator, random whatever, and I will have those and not use them. It's better to have it and feel like, oh, I can fall back on that if I need it, and never do, than to not have it. But But you can also, as a GM, you can always ask the players, you know,
Right.
as one of them asks you, "Hey, what's the name of this shopkeeper?" And you turn to the other player and you say, I don't know, James, what's the name of the shopkeeper?" And
Mhm.
now it's on James, So
Exactly.
so, just like in any Powered by the Apocalypse game, the GM is constantly asking the players for that world building information and asking, what's wrong here, or what's weird, or what's different, or who is this person? Even in a very traditional game, there's nothing wrong with turning that back to the player. And what I find is when you do that, the players now have a much higher investment in that shopkeeper.
Definitely.
And they will be more interested in that shopkeeper's future.
Mhm.
And if they come back to this town, they'll visit that shop. They'll remember that
Mhm.
shopkeeper's name when you don't. you know. So it's interesting to see how you can build that investment through those moments where you forgot or had no idea. So
Yeah, I totally do the same thing. That's my biggest thing that I've learned how to do is to say, "You tell me," when a player asks me a
yeah,
question that I feel like I don't have an immediate answer for. And it's great because it really does, like you said, it gets that investment. And it's also a way of like you learn what they care about and what they want to play. Right. When they ask a question and then you let them answer it, or you allow them to participate in the world building by asking questions, you learn like, oh, okay, this is really important to you. You wanted this shopkeep to be an old orc, or you wanted this shopkeep to be a 7-year-old boy for some reason. Like, let's explore that. Why are we doing this? What are we going down this road? And it's so cool. You learn a lot when you do that kind of thing with your players. And
yeah,
Powered by the Apocalypse is great. It's built in. You're already doing that when you're creating the world and characters and that sort of thing. Um,
yep.
I have a question from Blake Ryan Batman, which is, have you ever done a crossover with another Powered by the Apocalypse game? And I should bring up that Blake Ryan Batman is also the designer of the Conjure Hagalaz RPG, which is a Powered by the Apocalypse game as well. So maybe this is him asking
An
to collab.
invitation.
That's right. That's
um,
right.
I haven't yet. I'm not opposed to it. Threadbare's
Mhm.
a little weird in that it doesn't have combat per se,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
a crossover would hitting the right tone might be challenging with a good crossover. But there's no reason why it couldn't happen. How about that? Like Ryan
Exactly.
Batman.
So is there anything about Threadbare that you want people to know that we have not yet covered? It is a really great game. I really suggest people go out there, check it out. It is a great game to run. It is a super fun game to play and make characters in. It's just everything soup to nuts is so great about it. But is there anything in particular we haven't mentioned yet that
Yeah,
you want to talk about?
yeah, I'd like to mention two things. One is where you can get it,
Sure.
which is it's available on Drive-Thru RPG. It is available in both print on demand and PDF. The print on demand is
Mhm.
a little wonky right now. So the color softcover version, like this with a color interior, is currently out of print, even in POD, because there's a very long story, but in short, there's a printing error that keeps happening, and so we're trying to fix it. And then
Gotcha.
that is why I took it down from Drive-Thru, because I don't want it to be sold until we fix that problem, which should be fixed soon. But it is available in hardcover. There's a soft cover version that has a black and white interior, which is it's kind of a budget version, which is kind
Mhm.
of nice, especially if you're in a gaming group where it's like everybody wants their own book, but not everybody needs full color. Um,
Mhm.
and then and then there's of course the PDF, which if you if you buy any of the print copies, you get the PDF, and that goes for if you buy a print copy outside of Drive-Thru as well. If you buy it in a local game store or at a convention, and you send me an email and let me know and show, I might ask for some proof of purchase, like you holding the book, then I'll send you a copy of the PDF. But yeah, it's I do participate in Bits and Mortar as well.
Oh,
So
that's
that's one
awesome.
thing that I want people to know. And the other thing is the website is threadbarerpg.com, all
Easy.
one word. So yeah, it's and we have there's a blog on there where periodically, whenever somebody, people will write like an add-on or like a new move or an idea or an NPC, and they like people can create their own content, and I go through periodically and either edit or publish it. So there's like fan
Mhm.
created stuff in there that people can make, which is kind of fun.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So as we're sort of starting to wrap up here, I want to ask you two more questions. The big one is, when it comes to the world of role playing games, what hopes do you have for the future, both for yourself and for the industry as a whole?
Hmm. Well, one of the things that I have seen trend wise in the industry is, of course, greater diversity and a greater acknowledgement of what that means and what,
Mhm.
um, like, like how that broadens our experience overall. Um, and so, one of the things that I hope the industry continues the trend of I won't even say making space, but acknowledging the people who are in the space
Mhm.
and honoring the work that people are doing, who are not white or not male or not straight or not able-bodied. The people who are traditionally marginalized. I want to see more of that work, and I want to see more of that work recognized and honored. And I am continually um, uh, gladdened when I see that. When I see like Harlem Unbound taking a ton of Ennies last year, and things like that. Like that just fills me with joy. So it's a little bit like when Black Panther was the breakout movie this year. Like yes, yes, that's something new and exciting and different. So I love that. Um, for me personally, I am working on something that is adjacent to Burn Bright that I can't really discuss too much yet.
Dun, dun,
And
dun.
you know, and I'm working on a few like side projects with friends. But in terms of my like professional stuff right now, with working at Roll20 is a wonderful and fantastic job, and it is my dream job, and it is also the job that is like consuming a lot of my time, which I'm pleased with, but also like means that the personal projects they've slowed down a lot. So that's you know, six of one, half dozen of the other, right? Like you either have time or you have a job, right?
Mhm. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's good to have money to live and eat and all of the things that we need as humans to survive. And it's
Yeah,
also great that you have a job that you enjoy and love and is a dream job. That's great. Huge.
it really is. It really is.
Um,
I gotta say every day I'm like, I work at I work there? Like they pay me to come and do things at Roll20. This is amazing. But it is a good place to work, and we have a lot of very talented and brilliant people there. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I love a lot of the people at Roll20 as well. Um, and then final question before we get to plugging your stuff and where people can find you and all that goodness. But first, what advice do you have for people who want to do what you want to do?
you mean write games?
Yeah, yeah, write games or work for Roll20 or whatever. You can
Okay.
answer that as you will. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll answer both halves of that question. Now I'll start with if you want to work at Roll20, go to our blog, because right now we do have two job postings available. We're looking for a QA engineer and an app developer. So please go, and even if you're looking at this like 6 months from now, like check in on our blog periodically, because we do hire, and it's good. Like we want people to apply. So so that's the first thing, is like, if you want to do what I do at Roll20, go apply. The other thing is, if you want to be an independent game designer and make your own games, the first thing that I would suggest that you do is read games. Don't just play games, read games, because you will learn a lot about what not to do by how other people lay out their games or how they write them. Because you'll be reading a game, you'll be like, wait, wasn't that like back on page 30? Or they just referred to this term and I have no idea what it means, and so forth. So you'll learn a lot of things that people do poorly. You'll also learn what people do well. But most of what you'll learn about what people do well is from playing games. So you'll learn what not to do from reading them, and you'll learn what to do from playing them. Learn about playtesting. Playtesting is a very important part of game design, and it's the part that we always underestimate, both its importance and how long it takes. So definitely learn how to playtest, learn how to run a playtest, learn how to ask the questions, and the best way to learn that is by doing it. Schedule 6 months of playtesting before you even really decide that you're going to like revise your game. Start with a small game. Do not start by making the fantasy heartbreaker that's going to replace D&D, because that's a really big order. That's like saying, I'm going to be an independent game designer for video games, and I'm going to start by taking on Call of Duty. Like, no, just start with like a little web app or something. Start small. Start with something that you would play with friends in an hour. You know, my first like successful game, which I say successful because it won a contest. It was a 200-word RPG game, and it won the 200-word RPG contest. It plays in less than 2 minutes. Literally, if you are taking more than 2 minutes to play the game, you set the timer wrong, because it is a timed game. So yeah, like that. It's a very short game. So you want to start with something small, something short, something that is almost, if you think of it this way, and this is a beautiful way to think of it if you're a writer, think of it as your first game should be a haiku or maybe a limerick in length. And you know, the game that you have a big idea for, like save that for your epic. That's your big juicy piece that you're going to work on, and it'll take you a while, and it has a lot more to say. But you can make a game that is like a poem, and there are people who make what are called game poems. But you can make something that is just it captures one thing, you know, and it may be that one thing it's almost, you know, it ends up inside another game. That's fine too. But start with a small, like discrete piece that you can work on. My very first game when I was learning how to do all this was a deck builder, and in a way, it's like if you're a musician, it's almost an etude. It distills deck building down to just deck building. It doesn't have anything else on top of it. It's just, you know, like buying cards into your deck kind of thing. And it's very simple. It like distilling it down into that, and then playtesting it, because playtesting is again really important, helped distill it even further, to the point where it, I think, fits on one page. All the rules and everything. So like very, very concise. You want it to be small. So yeah, that would be my advice. And also just be patient with yourself. Don't get frustrated that that your game, your first game might not be good. Your first game might be great and your third game might not be good. And these are all okay. I have talked to game designers who are extremely successful and have, they've made millions in the game industry. And I've talked to them and they're like, oh yeah, my garage is just basically bins of games that I never published and never will
Right.
because they're not good games.
Sure.
That's okay. You can make a thing that isn't great, but you learned something from it.
Exactly.
Threadbare was at one point a card game. It's not anymore. It's okay. Things will evolve, and when you have an idea that you play test, and the people who are play testing say, "Can we play it again?" Keep working on that idea. That's one that is going to work. If
Sure.
it's the can I play it again? Can I play it more? Once you get that feedback, you know that you've got something that is
Definitely.
worth pursuing and worth developing.
That is huge and great advice. Definitely do the thing that you
Do the
want to
thing.
do. Yeah, you'll get better at it, and make sure you play test. God, that is the best advice in the world for any
Yeah.
game designer, new or old. Always play test. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining
Thank you
me. I
so much
really
for having
appreciate
me.
it. Where can people find you on the internet if they want to follow you and get more of your wisdom?
Well, obviously, I'm on Twitter as @Mortain until Twitter decides that they're going to be terrible or more terrible, I guess. But you can also find me at threadbarerpg.com. You can find me on Google Plus until they go away. I don't know. But yeah, the hashtag for Threadbare is ThreadbareRPG because there's apparently a Threadbare theatrical play, so I didn't want to get confused there.
Sure.
But if you search for Threadbare RPG, you'll find us eventually, either through the website, or you can find me on DriveThru. You can find the game there, and I think there's a way to contact the publisher if you buy it or something. I don't know. But yeah, there are ways to reach me. You can also the Kickstarter. There was a Kickstarter for Threadbare, and so you can contact the creator through that if you're really stuck. But pretty much, if you look for me, if you look for Stephanie Bryant or Mortain, you will find me. I don't hide.
Excellent. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And you made an incredible game, and super
Thank you
happy to
so
talk
much.
about it. And I can't wait to play more of it. People out there, this is a podcast that you can listen to. It's on the Encounter Roleplay YouTube channel. Head on over to don'tsplitthepodcastnetwork.com for the audio only version. And you can join us next week. My guest will be Emily Careboss, who made Bubble Gumshoe, which is an amazing and super fun role-playing game where you're teenage
As well as a
detectives.
ton of other awesome things. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I'm
Yes.
envious
Yeah.
of your upcoming interview. That will be so much fun.
It's
I'll
going
be
to be
sure to
super
tune in.
fun. Yeah, it'll be right here. So check it out.